The manager's amendment incorporates several important policy changes to the Clean Water Act principally to promote transparency and accountability, following on the committee's portion of the Economic Recovery Act, in which we require across the spectrum of our portion of the stimulus package openness, accountability, reports every 30 days, the first of which will be received on April 3rd by this committee from the whole range of federal agencies and state agencies that are receiving recovery funds. We take that principle and incorporate those concepts of openness and accountability for the future of this program. A review of the types and categories of projects, the activities carried out under the State Revolving Loan Fund, to be created from the funds that states will use and that cities will borrow from. We want to know the jobs created, the type of project, the categories of projects, the activities carried out, receive that information and make it public. We also provide additional criteria for states to determine affordability for wastewater infrastructure projects and activities, and tribal governments to be eligible for technical and management assistance for small publicly owned sewerage agencies. I reserve the balance of my time. I yield myself 2 minutes.
The gentleman is recognized for 2 minutes.
It's always astonishing to me over the going on 35 years now I've served in the House that on those few occasions when prevailing wage has become an issue of discussion on the House floor, it is characterized as job killing and union boss wages and other such, not that the gentleman from Florida used such language, but it has been used on other occasions. Far from job killing. Good Lord, this was a provision signed into law by Herbert Hoover on March 3rd, 1931, in response to an appeal from contractors who said that job-stealing contractors from other parts of the country were coming into New York on Long Island, where a federally funded hospital was being built, and undercut their wages. And that was pretty hard to do in those days because the wage was only about 25 cents an hour, and set up tents on the property where the construction project was underway to undercut the local contractor, who then appealed to the administration for help. Didn't get any, but the local Republican member of the House, Mr. Bacon, vigorously protested that practice. The Assistant Secretary of Commerce, Mr. Davis, left the administration, went back to Pennsylvania, was elected to the United States Senate, and in 1931 joined with Mr. Bacon, moved this legislation through the House, the Senate, and Herbert Hoover signed it into law. It has not killed jobs in over 70-some years. I reserve the balance of my time. This is the kind of debate we should have, based on facts, based on reality in the workplace, but deeply felt views on issues, and why I insisted at in committee and at the Rules Committee that the gentleman from Florida be allowed to offer this amendment in place at this point and early on in consideration of this bill. It's appropriate to have this discussion. I have great respect for the gentleman from Iowa, Mr. King, who spoke earlier. We've worked together on a great many issues. He too speaks from the heart and from his experience on a range of business matters. But and far be it from me to defend Herbert Hoover. But there are a few things in Hoover's repertoire that are worthy to note. He launched aviation security as Secretary of Commerce in 1926. He signed Davis-Bacon. He established a Reconstruction Finance Corporation. Not all of Hoover was bad, as he is associated with the Great Depression. But the gentleman from Iowa has left the floor, but I couldn't help noting that the prevailing wage in Sioux City for iron workers, $20.95. That's the average. That's not the union wage. That's prevailing wage. For a truck driver is $18.25 in Sioux City, compared to a truck driver prevailing wage in Minnesota, in my district in Lake County, $10.86. The prevailing wage varies all over the country, depending on what the local labor survey shows. This is not a national wage. This is not a negotiated wage. This is the best they do in that particular area and this particular skill. For the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Mack, a backhoe operator, prevailing wage is $11.04. A backhoe operator in northeastern Minnesota gets $14.64. A backhoe operator in Mr. Micah's district gets $10.35. Union wage is about double that. These are not confiscatory wages. They're just barely staying ahead of the minimum wage. I know what it's like to work as a laborer. I worked on laborer jobs when I was going through college, carrying a hod of mud for a bricklayer, puddling concrete on a street laying job, laying pipe for the water, for the sewage treatment plant in my hometown, at $1.25 an hour. That was below the minimum wage because we didn't have a union contractor on the job. We ought to pay people a decent wage, a living wage. All we're asking for is the prevailing wage. And when the gentleman from Florida, the ranking member, said earlier, this is an expansion, technically yes, because the law expired. The Republican majority allowed this legislation, state revolving loan fund, to expire. It was last authorized in 1994, and they allowed it to expire, and it hadn't been authorized since then. So technically you can say, yeah, it's new legislation. We're just restoring what was.
Gentleman's time's expired.
This amendment should be defeated.
Gentleman's time's expired.